One of my favorite stories is called the Allison story. And it's about one of the kids that I coached for 8 years when I was a swimming coach. She was an incredible person. She still is an incredible person. When she was a youngster, she just didn't have that belief that would take her to an incredible finish. Like so many of the people that we love, we know they have their potential, but they seem to stop themselves. And this is a story about a real breakthrough. I use this story in many of my programs to really bring everybody together and focused on the breakthroughs that they're about to experience themselves.
But the story that I want to tell you about that'll set us on a track for some unbelievable things we're going to do today was about one of the children that I coached for all 8 years who was never a star. And her name was Allison. And the first thing I want you to do is get a visual image of Allison, because I know that all of you as leaders, if you were charged with the responsibility to hire someone for a particular role, you'd know exactly the kinds of qualities and characteristics you were looking for. Outgoing for sales, meticulous about details and operations, whatever it is. Well, swim coaches, we know exactly what we're looking for. What we want is an athlete who's about 6'11", who weighs approximately 4 pounds. This is perfect, all right? Especially if their arms are so long they can tie their shoes without bending over. This is a swimmer. Well, Allison was exactly the opposite. When Allison was full grown, she never hit 5 feet tall. She was 4'11". She was very petite. She was very small boned. All right? And the coolest thing about Allison physically, because I want you to really see her in your mind, the coolest thing about Allison physically was her hair. Allison had the brightest, most bowl-you-over, shocking, bright red hair. And she used to wear it in those days kind of like little orphan Annie, like poofed up in a trillion curls. And I used to tease her that her own personal weight training program was just trying to get her cap over all that hair. It was like, thing you get on it would blow out. But she was a great kid, but she was never a star. She was the kind of person you'd love to have on your team right now. Why? Though she was a little bit shy, she'd be the first person to go to a teammate who was down and try to lift him up. She was intensely dedicated. She would miss practice never. When other kids would stay home for bumps and bruises or tired or sick or what, not Allison. She would come and she'd give her best every single day. But she was never a star. In fact, she was what we call in the sport of swimming, and I know you have them on your Staples team. I know you've probably seen this with your own kids. Maybe you've been this. She was what we call in the sport of swimming a drop-dead sprinter. And what I mean by that is she started things really well. It's kind of like that person who shows up 7:30, they're raring to go, 7:45, they're going, where's my coffee? I need my coffee. That's kind of the way that Allison swam. Now, Allison's best stroke, all right, the best stroke that she swam is the coolest stroke. If you know anything about swimming, it's a cool stroke. It's called butterfly. And butterfly is the power stroke. It's undulating. It's beautiful. It's got great hip motion. And as a drop-dead sprinter, she had quick speed. And for 8 straight years, I watched the same thing happen to this child that I adored. She would go out in her races like a rocket ship, up on top of that water, whipping down that pool, looking fantastic, out in front, close to the front. But for 8 straight years, the same thing would happen. With a half a lap to go, all of a sudden, the skies would open up, and a baby grand piano would fall from the heavens and would land right on Allison. And this beautiful kid that I loved would start to tie up. And the first thing that happened is her arms start dropping in wider because her body position and hips started dropping lower. She'd start struggling and starting to force her way instead of fly her way. She'd struggle harder, lactic acid building up in her arms and legs, the other kids beginning to press and press. She'd struggle harder now in absolute agony, face contorted, until about 8, 10, 12 strokes to go. The other kids would catch her, they'd pass her, until those last 6, 7, 8 strokes were utter agony. Barely able to get to that wall legally, keep her stroke legal. Dead last, crushed mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. So tired she could hardly get out of the pool. And for 8 straight years, she had the same instruction from her coach, who, keep in mind, just like you, wanted to be the best coach I could be, cared deeply about her, wanted her to have a real success. And for 8 straight years, the instruction was she was to come to me, her coach, right after a race, so I could talk to her, get her inspired, get her fired up. Right? And for 8 straight years, I did the same brilliant coaching job. This is brilliant coaching. She'd get out of that pool so tired she could hardly walk. She'd struggle over to me, and the first thing I'd do, I'd give her a great big old hug. And then I'd look her right in those eyes that usually shine so bright green, so full of joy, and now we're so dark and so hurt. And I'd look at her right in those eyes, and I'd say these highly inspiring coaching words. This is great coaching. I'd look her right in those eyes, and I'd go, Allison, you know, one of these days you're not going to die. And then I'd hug her again. And then I'd say, now go loosen up and remember, one of these days you're not going to die. Very inspiring, because off she'd go to the warm down pool thinking about not dying. Now, if I say to you, don't think of the number 3, what happens? 3 drops in your head. So for 8 straight years, guess what? The same thing kept happening over and over again. Now, the big deal in age group swimming is exactly like it is at Staples. Right? It's exactly like it is for your team. It's exactly what it's going to be for your children and for you. The big deal is to keep moving and growing. That's why you got 30 by 10. That's why you want to blow by those 60 numbers and customer satisfaction up in the 70s. You're always trying to set higher and higher standards. And in swimming, what you're trying to do is qualify for higher levels of competition. How do you do it? The same way you do it in your career right now. You got to meet and exceed those standards. And the big one that swimmers shot for on an age group level was called the Junior Olympics. How do you make it? You got to meet those standards. Well, I coached Allison 8 years. She never made it. She got close a few times, but swimming is like life. Because here's the truth. You guys just had an unbelievable 2005. What happens to your goals in 2006? They go up, all right? It's built in swimming. It's called age groups. See, when you're 12 years old, you're at the top of the 11 and 12-year-old age group. You're big, you're strong. You're looking at those scrawny little 11-year-olds and going, then you turn 13. And you go, whoa, they're big, they're tall, they talk deep, and they shave. Wow. Plus, the time standards get harder. Well, I coached Allison 8 years. She almost made it at the top of her age group, but then had a birthday, had to start up a much bigger mountain. Now, the last summer that I coached was a very emotional time, because I told the kids at the beginning of that summer that I was leaving coaching, which to this day is still the single most difficult decision I've ever made in my life. Because you're going to know one thing about me by the time we finish today. I am a coach. Nothing brings me more juice and joy than bringing out what's really inside of people, both individually and collectively. But I was leaving coaching for one reason, and that was I had no life. I had no life. Do you know that today the average American father spends less than 8 minutes a day in actual interaction with his children? And I didn't even have 8 minutes. I had no family, no prospects. All right, and though today is definitely about moving to 30 by 10, about getting better, about breaking through, it's about something that I believe must be there if you're going to do this in a long term. And I love the fact that Staples' goals are long term, and that is called balance. Today is just as much about balance, and I had no balance. So at the beginning of that summer, I told the kids I was leaving coaching. They were emotional, I was emotional, and the last meet that I would ever coach would be the older Junior Olympics at the end of that summer. Now, you need to know one more detail. We had finished second in those Junior Olympics for 3 years in a row. We were the Avis of swimming. We were always second. And we were second to a team called Mission Viejo. Anybody ever hear of Mission Viejo? You know anything about swimming? They were the greatest swimming team in the world. We were always second to them. Now, that summer when I told the kids that I was leaving coaching, 2 really important things happened. First, without me knowing it, all my senior kids got together and made a pledge that they were going to win the older Junior Olympics this time, send me off as the championship coach, throw me in the pool with my clothes on. It's weird, but they do it. All right? And the cool thing wasn't that they made the pledge. You know what it was? It was that I didn't know they made the pledge. Because if I had known they had set that specific goal, you know what I would have done in an instant? I would have used every ounce of my influence to try to talk them out of it. Because there was no way. You see, on paper, in this 3-day Junior Olympic Championship, we were going to be second again, but at least 500 points behind Mission Viejo. They had just too many kids seated too high in relation to our kids, and if I had thought they had set such a ridiculous pie-in-the-sky, seemingly unreachable goal, I would have tried to talk them out of it so they wouldn't feel crushed after the first day when they were nowhere near it. But the first cool thing that happened that summer was I didn't know they set the goal. Second great thing that happened that summer, Allison finally made it. She qualified for the Junior Olympics. Now, if you were fast enough, you could qualify and swim 7 events. She made it in 1, which was the 100-meter butterfly, which is up and back in a 50-meter pool. And I still remember the time standard to qualify in Allison's age group that year was 1:17:99. Guess Allison's qualifying time. 1:17:99. She made it exactly the time standard. In other words, 1/100th of a second slower. That is your fingernail distance. She'd have missed it. But she made it exactly, and I said, thank you, God. Nobody deserves her dream more than this child. Nobody's been a better teammate. Nobody's cared more. Nobody's worked harder. And what a gift to me that my last meet as a coach, she gets to be a part of our Junior Olympic team. So finally, the Junior Olympics come. My last meet I'm ever going to coach. I'm a very early person. I'm an extraordinarily early person. I get there really early, and the first person who shows up from my team is Allison. And I got to tell you, her hair is blothed out more than usual. She is like bouncing off the wall. She is so excited to finally be at Junior Olympics. She looks like a pinball bouncing back and forth. And I just look at her and I smile. I enjoy her enthusiasm. But then I go to do my normal deal, the same thing you do at the beginning of your work day, your work week, your work month. What do? Same thing you do. I go and check my information. My information, just like you check your email, you check some reports, my information happens to be the seating sheets. It shows me the order of the events, shows me where the kids are seated, and I noticed that the very first event of the entire Junior Olympics is Allison's one event. And there are 64 girls who have qualified in her age group in the 100-meter butterfly. Now, she's on the top line, which means she's the slowest of the 64 girls. But in my analytical coaching mind, I go, you know, that's okay. In fact, that is darn lucky. Why? Because there's 64 girls. There are 8 lanes in a championship pool. That means she's going to be in heat 1, which I knew she'd be in, being the slowest possible entrant. But because there's 8 swimmers in each heat, she's going to be heat 1 in lane 8, right next to the edge of the pool. I'm thinking maybe we could yell really loud, scare her to finish her well for once in her life. Now, the thing you do with a swimmer at a Junior Olympics is just what you do when you welcome new associates into your team. The first thing you want to do with them is get them comfortable, get them acclimated, get them oriented, get them ready so they can perform. So as a swimming coach, what I would do is I would send the kids on a long, easy, loosen up, warm up. Every pool feels different. Every pool looks different. Get them to practice their turns, gradually warm up their muscles. And then when they're good and warm, it's time to get them pumped. Just like you got that new associate, you trained them a little bit, you got them ready. Now get them out there, get them psyched, get them pumped, let them know they can do it. So as a coach, what I would do is stand halfway down the pool at the 25-meter mark. And then one by one, I'd have each of my swimmers do all-out 25-meter sprints. Get them psyched, get them revved, get them pumped. So there's little Allison up on the blocks, hair blothed out, green eyes shining, smiling. I just look at her, I go, ready? Hop, boom, she hits the water. She's whipping down the pool. Her hips are flying. She's looking fantastic. Remember, she's a drop-dead sprinter anyway. She's got quick speed. She whips by me. I never saw her look so good. I hit my watch. I get her 25-meter time. It's her best 25 by 0.2 of a second, which is quite a lot in 25 meters. And I don't know whether it was how great she looked when she swam that 25 or what her face looked like when I told her time, but something actually started to break through my thick skull, and I started to get an idea. And I looked at her and I said, Allison, how do you feel? She goes, Coach, I feel great. I said, Allison, you look awesome. When I said that, I think her hair actually got redder. I think it lit up a little bit. I said, Allison, you look awesome, and I got an idea. She goes, what is it, Coach? I said, Allison, do you know that when you swim your 100-meter butterfly, you're going to be in the very first heat of the entire Junior Olympics right here in the same lane, lane 8, where you just did your awesome sprint. She goes, cool, Coach, it's my lucky lane, lucky lane, lucky lane. I go, Allison, will you please just listen? All right. I said, Allison, when you swim the 100-meter butterfly, I'm going to stand right where we are now at the 75-meter mark. So you swam 50 meters, you made your turn. I'm going to be standing right here at 75 meters. Now she's sort of curious. She goes, okay. I said, Allison, when you breathe at 75 meters, now in butterfly, you breathe with your chin forward, both ears out of the water. You can hear really well, especially in the outside lane. I said, Allison, when you breathe at 75 meters, I'm going to yell one word to you. Now her eyes are getting really big. She's into it. She goes, what's the word, Coach? What's the word? I said, the word is the word now. She goes, great. She thinks about it for a second. She goes, what exactly does that mean, Coach, now? That's not a swimming term, is it? I said, Allison, when you hear the word now at 75 meters, I want you to envision and pretend that you just dove in the pool and are swimming the same 25-meter sprint you did just now when you were flying across the pool and you did your best time by 0.2 of a second. Remember how fast you felt, how your timing was perfect, how you were on top of the water? Remember how great you felt? She goes, yeah. I go, what's the word? She says, now. I said, that's right. Now go check in. She skips off going now, 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 now. Now, whenever you get a breakthrough idea, oftentimes the best part of that idea is not that idea. It's simply that it opens your eyes to things that were right in front of you that you weren't seeing before. See, I believe a closed mind is an incredibly good thing to lose. Right? But when I thought of this idea of now, I got another breakthrough idea. See, I knew that swimming, just like Staples, is absolutely a team sport. We have no idea how much we mean to each other. We have no idea how much Germany is affecting the United States. We have no idea how much each of us affects each other. But I saw it every day as a coach, and it was unmistakable. Because I saw that when we worked together the way we could work together, it was like the pool began to move downhill. And everybody caught that energy and moved with it. And when we didn't do that, it was like the opposite. So knowing this, I always did the same thing. I always sent all of my kids to the end of the pool to cheer their teammates on when they got to the turn. But when I thought of this now thing, I got a breakthrough idea. And instead of sending all the kids to the end of the pool, as I always had done before, I had about 100 total kids at Junior Olympics, I only sent half of them, which was about 50 of them. But then I gathered the other 50 kids, and I had them get right behind me at 75 meters. And I said, listen, when Allison swims in this very first heat, she gets to 75 meters, she takes a breath, I'm going to give you this signal. Boom. My hand goes down. Your job is to yell now so loud, water flies out of the pool, the bleachers break, and we scare into finishing well for once in your life. Can you do it? And these kids, they got all this nervous energy. Yeah, coach, we can do it, we can do it. I got to tell you the truth. I knew my kids. They were my life. And I got to tell you, I hoped and prayed that with everything we thought of, with the 50 kids at the end of the pool, with them cheering their hearts out, with the 50 kids behind me at 75 meters, with them yelling now so loud the bleachers actually did break, and then hopefully with the pool being like slightly tilted downhill on the last 25 meters. With all of that, maybe Allison could go 1:17.5 or 6. Maybe she could improve 3, 4, 5 tenths of a second, because I knew the swim of her life had been the swim that got her into the Junior Olympics less than a month before. So I was just hoping and praying she could go a little bit faster, first for how good she'd feel inside to improve, but also to get our team off to a great start. So here it comes, the moment this child has dreamed of her entire swimming life. Imagine if it was your daughter, your son. Imagine somebody you care deeply about. Little shrimpy Allison out in lane 8, hair blothed out, green eyes shining, thinking now, 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 now. The other 7 swimmers are ready to go, and the starter gets everybody in that swim stadium dead quiet. And he says, judges and timers ready, swimmers. Take your mark. Boom! Gun goes up. Allison hits the water. She's whipping down the pool. She's looking fantastic. Her timing is perfect. She is just flying along. By 25 meters, she is a body length ahead of the second place kid. And everybody on our team is getting totally excited, except me, because she's always ahead at 25 meters. It's the last 25 that I'm worried about. But then the first magic started. Because every time she took a stroke from 25 meters as she went towards the turn at 50 meters, what did she see at the end of the pool? What'd she see? Teammates, what were they doing? Cheering. I don't mean they were giving the royal British cheer. They're not going, oh, good luck, I hope you do well, lovely, all right? Notice I said royal for all the Britons here, all right? All right. They're not going, oh, good luck, I hope you do lovely. They're going bonkers. Their faces are bright red. They're illuminated. They're jumping up in the air. Their fists are flying. Their faces are red. They're yelling, go, Allison. What did they see in the pool as they looked down at Allison? You know what they saw? They saw the same thing your associates look at when they see you. They saw themselves. Why? All right, because she's from the same system, the same opportunity, the same training, the same preparation. If she does great, what does it mean to each and every one of them? It means I'm going to do great. And if she doesn't, something's going to have to be rebuilt. You talk about getting energy and electricity. She filled up with them. They filled up with her. And incidentally, who were those 50 kids to Allison in her mind? Besides her teammates and her friends, who were those 50 kids cheering their hearts out for her? You know who they were? They were her heroes. They were the kids that for 8 years she had dreamt about making their team, the Junior Olympians, the kids she always looked up to. All right, you talk about filling up with something. Never underestimate the impact of your recognition, acknowledgement, and praise for the people who look at you the way Allison looked at them. You talk about somebody finding something she didn't even know she had. She filled up with them. She flew into that turn. She does the best turn I ever saw her do. She whips out of that turn. These kids are going absolutely bonkers. I get my 50-meter split. I look at my watch. I go, this is great. She could still die and do a great time. This is awesome. And then something happened that I will treasure for as long as I live. Through no coaching of mine, because I flat out didn't think of it. But you talk about synergy, you talk about one team. When Allison came flying out of that turn, all 50 of her teammates at the end of the pool were so connected to her, so synergized, so one, that as one, they got the same spontaneous idea. And as she pushed off that wall, all 50 of them as one came running around the corner of the pool. Remember, they're at lane 8 anyways, right on the outside. They came running around the corner, started running, and I mean running over people to join the other 50 crazy kids who are behind me at 75 meters. All of a sudden, I got 100 crazy kids on much less space in this space and then this stage, and I got to tell you, I was just a little worried they're going to bump me in on my swimmer, get her disqualified. And here comes Allison at 80 meters, still looking pretty good. 77 meters, still looking pretty good. She gets to 75 meters, she takes a breath. I go like this, bam. You hear this now, so loud. I'm pretty sure the bleachers kind of creaked a little bit. I'm pretty sure I saw some water fly out of the pool. But then something happened that changed the way I see. You see, my whole life, I wanted nothing more than to really see through the eyes of a coach. But I don't believe I really began to see through the eyes of the coach till that 75-meter mark that day for that little red-haired girl. Because 75 meters for Allison is the same line that every one of our children is going to face in their life, maybe today. 75 meters is the same line that every one of those 68,000 associates is going to face in their career with Staples, maybe today. And 75 meters is the same line that everyone sitting in this room right now is going to face in your career, in your family, in your life, maybe today. You see, 75 meters for Allison was the line between fear, which had always won, and freedom. Between failure and absolute faith. And though I loved this child and I wanted to be the best coach I could be, just like you do, it was not until that 75-meter mark that day that I realized that I, more than anyone, had taught her to fear and taught her to fail because of the way I saw her at that 75-meter mark. You see, I was just looking at her hoping she wouldn't die as much as usual. But all of a sudden, when she heard that word now from those 100 crazy kids, something shook free inside of her. And all of a sudden, she started climbing up on top of that water. She started chewing up the pool. She looked kind of like Miss Budweiser, the hydroplane, whipping down some lake. She's driving quite crazy with about 12 strokes to go. She's flying, 8 strokes to go. She fills up her lungs, refuses to breathe, which is incredibly difficult in a 100-meter butterfly, fills those lungs to the point of bursting, head down driving, refusing to breathe, head down driving, bam, 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 boom. She hits the wall like this. She looks down the other 7 lanes. There's nobody there. She told me later she thought they'd already finished and got out. I look at my watch, I shake the bugger, I tap it, can this be right? See, I had hoped and prayed that with everything perfect, maybe Allison could go 1:17.5 or 6. And believe me, I knew my kids. They were my life. At least I thought I did. Allison had gone 1:05.9. She had finished more than 10 bodies ahead in a 100-meter butterfly. Now, I had many kids extraordinarily blow by their personal records the years as a coach, but none so far beyond what I thought was possible for them. And I couldn't move. I'm sitting there literally shaking like a leaf. Now, how do you think Allison felt having gone 12 seconds faster than she's ever done in her life? She did not climb out of the pool. She did not even jump out of the pool. She merely levitated out of the pool. And she didn't walk to me or run to me. She spun to me going, Coach, 1:05.9, 1:05.9, 1:05.9, 1:05.9. Call me quick. At least I didn't say, well, at least you didn't die, Allison. At least I didn't say that. I was trying to think of something coachy to say. I'm standing there stunned, and finally I go, Allison, that was amazing. You know, go loosen up. She goes, okay, coach, like she really had to loosen up. She skips off going off to the side. Now keep in mind that this was just the first of 8 qualifying heats. The morning swims are about one thing, and that is to qualify for the finals at night. And only the 8 fastest of those 64 will make it back to the finals that night. Well, Allison moved from number 64 on paper to qualifying first, which meant she would come back that night, lane 4, fastest qualifier, first final of Junior Olympics. All right, and we get to one of the first big breakthrough ideas in this program, and that is about that 75-meter mark, and it's something just incredible. It says that whenever a human being or a team breaks through their 75-meter mark between fear and freedom, between failure and faith, between ego and we go, right, as powerfully, as joyfully, as completely, as utterly as Allison did that morning, they will never go back because something changes inside. And that's exactly what happened to Allison. See, for the first time in her life, this beautiful, precious child actually knew instead of hoped that she was really somebody, that she was important, that she mattered. And she came back that night and she was different. Now, she still maintained her other great qualities, one of which happened to be humility. She was probably the most humble person you'd ever meet. In fact, the girl who qualified second, who would be swimming right beside Allison in lane 5 that night, was Allison's all-time swimming hero. This girl had made the junior nationals at 12 years of age. Swimming World magazine had done a 4-page spread on her, and Allison had cut out her pictures and put them up all around her room. It's probably the only time that a fastest qualifier in a junior Olympic final hoped to get an autograph from the second fastest qualifier on the way to the final. But Allison was different, and she came back that night, and she went even faster. In fact, by that same 75-meter mark, she and her hero in lane 5 had completely pulled away from the rest of the field. It was a 2-girl race. It was like years ago with McGuire and Sosa, each one raising the bar, stroke for stroke. Their kids cheering, our kids cheering. They get inside the flags. They are dead even, heads down driving, bam, 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 boom. They hit the wall. It was so close that looking above water, you couldn't call the finish. The splash was won. So everybody in the swim stadium did exactly the same thing. Everybody whipped their head around, look at a big electronic scoreboard, because they hit electronic touchpad. Their time and places flashed out to the 100th of a second. And Allison had finished second by 2/100ths of a second. But she had gone even faster, more than 2/10 faster. She had gone 1:05.69, more than 2/10 faster, and something incredible happened then. You know what it was? It was when Allison finished second that night, she still knew she was a champion. How many times have you seen somebody you love go out and do the best job of their life? Work harder, greater result, greater performance, but they finished 7th or 2nd or 18th, or they got a B+ instead of an A, and they tried so hard. See, almost all of us have been raised with a culture that says success means there is one winner, therefore everyone else, not someone else, is a what? Loser. We didn't teach that. We taught a definition of success that is exactly the one that John Wooden used to create the most successful teams in college basketball history. Our definition of success said that success is peace of mind. And it comes from one thing. It comes from knowing that you've given the best of which you're capable. In other words, if you have to look at the scoreboard, you don't know. You got to look inside and know you gave it all. We taught this every day. And at this, I'm convinced, most pivotal moment in her life, Allison actually got it. In fact, when she saw where she had finished, she and her hero saw where they'd finished. Her hero in lane 5 leans across the lane line, gives Allison this giant hug, looks her right in the eye and goes, "Allison, that was an awesome race." Allison jumps out of the pool beaming. She skips by me. She goes, "Coach, I really don't need to talk to you. She said I did an awesome race." I got to tell you, that was one of the best moments in my coaching career, because how easily she could have felt crushed when she needed to feel ecstatic. She gave it all. Now, something happened to our team that day, which is what today is all about. In fact, what these past few days has been all about. Right? And after Allison went 1:05.9 that morning, something happened to our team that I want to happen to this team today. It's something that I now call the Allison factor. Because after Allison went 1:05.9, our kids started going bonkers. If they were seated 40th, they'd qualify 7th and make a final. If I thought with a perfect swim they could improve 1 second, they'd improve 3 and 4 seconds. This was the best coaching job of my entire career. For 3 days, I stood on the side of the pool and went, "Holy cow. Wow, woo." Every now and then I'd throw in a, go loosen up, but kind of sound like a coach. But mostly I was just trying not to mess it up. Now, didn't stop there, never does. The Allison factor goes where it really needs to go. And there was another teammate affected that day, just as deeply, maybe more deeply, that I know affects every single human being in this room. And it was a teammate who did not swim. It was a teammate by the name of Allison's father. Now, I had known this man for 8 years. He was a nice man, but I would say arguably the least emotional humanoid on the planet. Now, I knew he cared about his daughter for one reason, which was he usually showed up. And that was it. He never cheered for her. He never went to her when she was down to console her or congratulate her when she did well. In fact, he had the same MO. I watched this for 8 years, whether he was going to a practice or a meet. He was the most voracious book novel reader I've ever seen, and he would get as far away from the pool action as he could, and this man would read all day long. I'd watched it for 8 years. But that morning when Allison went 1:05.9, as I'm still kind of stunned, this least emotional humanoid comes out of the stands walking towards me kind of like this. And I got to tell you, had I been a little bit together, I probably would have run, but I was not that together. And before I can even think, this man who's never shown the slightest emotion, he gets up to me, he throws his arms around me. And I must tell you, until I had my own 2 daughters, nobody has ever held me that tight, that long, without talking. He's holding me so tight that he's got his chest pinned up against my chest. I feel his heart literally pounding into my chest. He's shaking and quivering, but he's not talking. He's just holding me. Held me for it seemed like an eternity. Finally, he lets go enough to hold me by my shoulders. He's shaking like a leaf, and I look at this man who's never shown the slightest emotion. He is literally pouring tears, which is big trouble for me because I cry at openings of supermarkets, so I'm gone. Okay, so he's crying, I'm crying, nobody's talking. He's just looking at me with this look of awe and wonder and confusion all rolled into one. And finally, he ekes out in a whisper the question he'd come to ask me. He says, "What did you do to her?" And I said something brilliant like, "I have no idea." And then I said something that was much more accurate and much more appropriate. I said, "You know, there was so much more in Allison than I ever dreamed of. I just didn't see it. She's the one. She's incredible. She did it." And this man hugged me again. He held me another 10 seconds, shaking like a leaf, and then he wobbled off. Probably my favorite part of the story now, because I look at life simple. I have 2 jobs that above all, and that is father and husband. And that night, something happened that was even better than Allison going faster. Something that if I had to choose, I would even put a tiny bit better than her knowing she was a champion, though she happened to hit the wall second. Because that night, when Allison swam her final, standing right behind her timers in lane 4, illegally I might add, was her daddy. And he cheered his lungs out for his little girl. In fact, probably the only person in that swim stadium who did not bother to see where she finished was her daddy. He was too busy, because as soon as he could, he rushed to the edge of the pool, he reached down, he picked her up, he wrapped his arms around her, he's getting soaking wet, he's laughing, he's crying, he's telling her how proud he is to be her daddy, how much he loves her. And when I saw Allison in her daddy's arms, I realized something about breaking through that I've tried to remember every single day since. And it's the best part. I realized when I saw Allison in her daddy's arms that we never, ever, ever, ever break through alone. Whenever we break through in any way, we cannot help but affect the very people we most want to affect. That's one of the best things about 30 by 10, because it isn't just going to affect you, it's going to affect everyone you touch. And I never saw it more clear than I saw in Allison in her daddy's arms.